results are game changing. So I'll turn it over to Scott.
Bear with us. This is like a 10-minute, and then we'll be able to take a break and then come back for questions.
Can everybody hear me okay? Volume?
I'll start on the mic.
Okay, volume closer. All right. Scott Wallace with Lakes at Stake. I'll try to keep this again real brief, but I think some important things to kind of tie together what you all heard this morning. We go to the next slide, Beth. Just a quick promo plug for us. We are a nonprofit organization. We were founded 2 years ago, and we were founded in response to the both education and advocacy for protecting our lakes, but also Madison. The wakeboat industry has been trying very dearly. They know what's happening with the science unit, all the things we saw this morning. And they've been trying very, very hard to get some favorable legislation passed in Madison. And so we have a lobbyist that we have hired that's been on the case here for getting. Are you able to turn that mic up at all, Brian? Yeah, give me a little boost. Yeah, a little boost. All right. A little bit better? All right. We have a lobbyist. We're on the case here. And if we're not in Madison, sort of, guarding the fort here, there would have been, and there will still may be, a very bad wake surf bill. So come visit our website, www.lakesatsstake.org. We'd love any kind of financial support you can get. We're all volunteer, except again, lobbying does cost money. So let's go to the next slide. Minnesota, this is some real groundbreaking stuff that they have done 3 years ago and have put out just a couple weeks ago. So Minnesota, St. Anthony Falls Laboratory, it's a division of the University of Minnesota. And in year 2020, people in Minnesota, land of 10,000 lakes, they were saying, these wake boats, these surface waves are just killing people. They're killing, they're crushing shorelines, they're crushing fishermen, they're crushing swimmers. We got to figure out, are these waves more powerful than a regular boat wave? So phase one was crowdfunded. People in Minnesota came up with about $200,000. They were able to get St. Anthony Falls to take on the case. St. Anthony Falls went out on an actual Minnesota lake. They tested multiple types of boats, including 2 wake boats, and they measured what these waves were at the height and energy as they came ashore. And they basically said that waves from a wake boat at 500 to 600 feet are approximating a regular boat at about 200 feet. Really important study done on a real lake, real water. At the same time as this was released, literally a couple weeks after this was released in spring of 2022, the wakeboat industry released their computer study. You probably hear that. The computer study is a simulation that some engineers ran, and in that computer simulation, they used a hypothetical computer version model wakeboat running at 125 horsepower and 143 horsepower. Yeah, I mean, these boats have motors that are 350, 450, 550 horsepower now. Well, they ran that, they dumped it out, and they made conclusions in it that wake surfing is great 200 feet from shore and at 10-foot water depth. Literally every researcher that has looked at this issue and looked at that study has basically said it's a piece of garbage. But you're going to hear people continue to tout this study. So Minnesota, St. Anthony Falls, people said, we also have to figure out what's going on with the lake bottom. You heard a lot of great pieces this morning on that aspect. And so just 3 weeks ago, they released phase 2. Phase 2 was done on Lake Minnetonka, and phase 2, no one knew when this was going to drop. It just came out, it was really about a year overdue, and it just came out 3 weeks ago. I want to really applaud Protect Lake Beulah and what they've done here on this issue. I want to applaud your Lake District for bringing in Terra Vigilis. And I know that I saw one comment on social media, hey, why is Beulah doing this study when Minnesota's out? Well, the thing is, again, no one knew that Minnesota was going to drop. I mean, you guys were well into your research here, and all of a sudden, boom, there it is. The great part is, though, is that as Tim said earlier, the results you got on Lake Beulah really dovetail very well with what Minnesota says on phase 2. And I will tell you that if Beulah just did your research and brought it out public like you have today, you would have people on the wake surf side saying, oh, that was all rigged, photoshopped, fake, etc. if Minnesota had come out without Lake Beulah, people would be saying, Minnesota, faked, rigged, phony science, etc. The great thing is, both of them are coming out essentially at the same time. They're both correlating directly with each other. And to the wake surf industry, no, the moon landing was not faked. Okay? Phase 3, important thing on phase 2. Phase 2 started out crowdfunded. State of Minnesota, though, however, looked at phase 1, looked at the demand by the public and said, this is good science. We need to fund this as a state. So most of phase 2 was funded with Minnesota taxpayer dollars. Minnesota also came forward to fund phase 3. Same researchers are working on phase 3 right now, and what they're doing is they have sensors, like you see here on this photo, in lakes across the state, and they're trying to measure the differences and impacts of wind waves, storm waves, and boat waves. And so they anticipate that may be out a year from now. That's something to look forward to. So let's go to the next slide. Here are the key takeaways from Minnesota Phase 2. Wake boats should be operating in at least 20 feet of water. Protect the bottom, protect the lake, protect fish habitat. But then it goes a little further. It says if you have weed cover on the bottom, the 20 feet should really start counting from the top of those weeds. So if you have aquatic vegetation that is 3 feet, 4 feet off the bottom, you probably are looking at a 25-foot depth recommendation. Other thing to note, Tuesday night, August 26th, the researchers from University of Minnesota are going to hold a free Zoom presentation on their findings for phase 2. You can just Google it, St. Anthony Falls Lab, August 26th, or you can, if we can access this link, we'll put it up on our website, our Facebook page. You can watch, and they're going to take questions, and I think it's going to be a great event on Tuesday night. Let's go to the next slide if we can. Let's give it a shot. Now, try to hit play, see if this works. If it doesn't work, it's a little 4-minute clip from Minneapolis.
Fresh.
We're gonna let this ad play.
It's not a free.
We don't have the paid YouTube subscription.
You can
What you're gonna see is a 4-minute video.
The power of wake boats seems obvious on the surface.
This was conducted on Lake Minnetonka.
But to better understand their effects on the environment, you have to go underwater. Over the course of 2 years, University of Minnesota researchers Andy Riesgraff and Jeff Moore have studied the effects of power boats,
We looked at 7 different recreational boats.
including wake boats, which are designed to sink deeper in the water, creating a larger, more surfable wave.
It's significant. Boats are getting bigger, more powerful in the state, and so that energy is going into the water and it's impacting the water column and the lake.
The team of researchers used underwater sensors and cameras
I think the videos are quite striking.
to document how the power of those waves impact the lake bed. Watch what happened during these experiments on Lake Minnetonka.
The water depth here is 9 feet.
On the left is a standard recreational boat skimming across the lake. On the right is a wake boat in wake surf mode at the same spot and the same depth. You can see the waves from the wake boat kicking up sediment and plant life, clouding up the water.
You get quite a bit of disruption, erosion, resuspension of material, and even damage to vegetation.
Here's another look, this time at a greater depth of 14 feet.
It's like a bomb goes off. And that's a really big damage. Aquatic plant communities are fragile.
While University of Minnesota researchers acknowledge all boats have the potential to damage aquatic vegetation, they recommend wake boats should only operate in surfing mode where the water is 20 feet deep or greater to minimize impacts on the lake bed. But wake surf business owners like Adam Moore,
What are we going to limit next?
worry about ongoing efforts to regulate wake surfing on Minnesota's lakes.
It's not just Minnesota, it's around the country that, people are fighting this.
The boating industry has its own studies too, including this one co-authored by employees of a boat manufacturer, which says, quote, the environmental impact is minimal when operating a wake boat in just 10 feet of water. Right now, Minnesota does not have a law that limits or restricts wake surfing.
All in favor? Aye.
But in northern Minnesota last year, property owners on Caribou Lake voted to ban wake surfing citing a previous U of M study which found wake boats need a distance of more than 500 feet to decrease waves similar to that of a standard recreational boat at just 200 feet.
So it's a huge issue.
Steve Frawley and Chuck Becker are now hoping to replicate similar wake surfing bans on potentially thousands of Minnesota lakes.
For the smaller lakes, the more shallow lakes, I would suggest they're just not appropriate for enhanced wake sports.
U of M researchers have since found that turbulence from wake boats adversely impacts lakes, stirring up sediments in the water, releasing nutrients like phosphorus, and leading to excessive algae growth.
These finer sediments can stay mobilized for a long time.
This view from above reveals the trail of the disturbed lake bed, and this is what it looked like nearly an hour later.
Seeing the videos, it just brings it home.
And what depth is this? 9 feet.
But it's these new videos and what they reveal
And right there's the pressure waves, and now we see the bubbles from the exhaust and propeller wash.
that could play a key role in future conversations about regulating wake surfing
I think the results of this study will help protect Minnesota's lakes, definitely.
and how we treat our lakes.
We really hope at the highest level, people become aware of what's going on under the water, what their boat is doing.
Now, there is a third part to this U of M study, which is now currently underway. The focus of phase 3 is to examine the effects of waves that are generated by wind versus power boats and any potential impacts to the shoreline. But it could be a while before we know any of the results from those experiments. For the Fox 9 investigators, I'm Nathan O'Neill.
You deserve the best. At Harbor Freight, you can...
There we go. Just key elements of this study. So in October of 20, the reason this study, people ask, why did this study take so long? Were they rigging the results? Were they trying to get what they wanted? No, here's what happened. They were out on Lake Minnetonka in October of 2022, and they were testing in a flat area bay with 27-foot depth. They had sensors on the bottom at 27 feet. They had sensors in mid-water column at 16 feet, and they were running all these different types of boats over it. And they were measuring kind of similar, sort of call it, you did the live scope. They were utilizing acoustic Doppler technology, a number of other scanners, a number of other sensors, and they were doing that and getting results that were showing that these wake surf impacts from the waves and the prop wash were penetrating deep in the water column. So we thought that report was going to come out in the summer, fall of 2023. The researchers, however, started seeing videos coming up, like the one that you guys did, that were showing, and these are drone videos, that were showing the bottom sediment getting blasted apart from the air. So the researchers took a pause, and they said, if we just put out a study that just shows sort of, live scope type stuff, it's not really going to answer the question for either side here. So they went back out on Minnetonka fall of 2023, and that's where they captured those videos in the 9 and 14 foot depths. Question is, why did they pick 9 feet? Why did they pick 14 feet? Well, different legislative proposals, including discussion with the wake surf industry, were, 10 feet is safe, 10 feet is safe. So they said, well, let's go to 9 feet, and if 9 feet looks safe, well, maybe we can have a 10-foot regulation. Well, as you saw, 9 feet, the bottom gets obliterated. And they said, well, what if we go to 15 feet? Won't that be safe? So Minnesota said, let's test this thing at 14 feet. It's not safe at 14 feet, obviously not at 15 feet. And so it took time to get all of that together and that data. And then they were facing pressures from outside groups, whether it be wake boat owners, whether it be wake boat industry. And they said, when we put this thing out, it's going to face a lot of scrutiny. This thing has to be airtight. So it is a 185-page report, tour de force, covers everything. It's virtually bulletproof from a science standpoint, including the videos. None of us are going to read the full 185 pages. I did, but the videos, just in 5 minutes, you can see what's going on. And again, the great part with your lake district and Protect Lake Beulah, what you're doing here with this research, is you're building on what was done by them. And when I say building, I thought 2 takeaways I took from this morning, really big ones. When Tim and Charles were up, that 500-foot, 200-foot from shore wave video, that was stunning. We all heard the wake boat owners tell us my waves are the same at 200 feet. No, we saw that. It was scientifically measured, multi-cameras, and other boats were tested. The other thing that was fantastic about this morning are the divers. Minnesota did all their testing essentially 2 years ago. They never thought of having divers in the water. Having divers in the water, you heard these folks. Very good testimony. They said they were seeing silt outs at 20, 25-foot depths. So again, all of this is really coming together. Next slide, if you can, Beth. I'm going to pass on this slide, go to the next one. Beth, if you can, well, okay. We'll watch this one, it's 20 seconds. Here's a boat going over the sensor for Minnesota at 14 feet. Now you're probably saying, what's going on? I don't see much. Another boat is going over the sensor at 14 feet. A little bit. Now, that was a Sea Ray IO, okay? Minnesota has up on their website, St. Anthony Falls Lab, YouTube, all these videos. And they tested multiple boats. It's only the wake boats that blow the heck out of that water. Beth, if you can go to the next slide. Here's the wake boat. Let's see if we can get this one, see if it works. You're gonna watch this one again for like the second time this morning, but it's really, really powerful. No, it's okay, Beth, it's all good. Here comes the Nautique wake boat. It's in a wake surf mode. Bam. And what's so fascinating is this sort of tornadic hurricane activity on the bottom of the water column, this lasts for minutes. The researchers at St. Anthony's, one of the comments I saw in one of their public commentary where they said, we measure this turbulence with our acoustic Doppler radar that's still going on 8 minutes after the wake boat passed by. Next slide if you can, Beth. Advance it with the, there we go. All right, I'm gonna try to wrap this thing up here. The wake boat industry see Minnesota. Today and Monday night, they're gonna see Beulah. And the question is, what are they gonna do? What's the response? Well, what they've done, one thing they've done is they have a Wake Responsibly campaign, educational campaign. Wake Responsibly has been around for a number of years. It has 3 tenets to it. Don't play loud music, avoid repetitive passes, and stay 200 feet from shore. They have since modified in the past 2 weeks the Wake Responsibly guideline to say stay 200 feet from shore and in 10-foot depth. Now, you and I, we look at this and we say, well, wait a second. We're just seeing 14 feet, the bottom getting blown up. We're hearing testimony from divers, the bottom getting blown up at 20, 25 feet. How do these guys say 10 feet? Here's the thing. The wake boat industry, for them, it is all about acreage of available water in the state of Wisconsin for them to wake surf in. And so they know that if they acknowledge any of the stuff that's been presented this morning, or University of Minnesota, they know that that takes thousands of acres of water off the map for their customers to use, and that means lower sales. So they are going to fight tooth and nail to get a 10-foot depth and call it science. Where they're basing it on is they're basing it on their crummy computer study from 2022, which again, everybody's knocked down. And if you go to the Minnesota Phase 2 report, in sections 3.1 and 3.2 at the beginning, the Minnesota researchers take on that wake boat industry study. They point out why it's complete garbage. The other thing the wake boaters, they brought this one up a year ago. There was a study, there were some boats taken out on a lake in Indiana back in 2018. It was the Drager study. And they ran some different boats over a stretch of water. After the boats passed, including a wake boat, they then moved another boat in that dropped some jars in the water to measure sediment. And that came to the conclusion that wake boats don't really disturb much based on sediment in 10 feet of water. The problem with that study, and again, Minnesota addresses that study too in their report, is they used a tiny wake boat. This was done in 2018, this was 7 years ago. They used a tiny wake boat, 4,200 pounds, only 750 pounds of ballast. The guy driving the boat happened to be the wake boat dealer, okay? So, not saying anything nefarious there. And it's only 11 pages long, this report. And again, all they did was just drop a water sample, and at the time, you know, it was interesting what they did, but so much of the science has advanced this. So what TerraVigilance has done takes way beyond what these folks in Indiana did. And Minnesota really is the nail in the coffin as the gold standard. So we talked about the wakeboat industry. Why are they, you know, still hanging on to this 10 feet? They need water, acres of water. Let's talk about friends and neighbors that we all have that own a wakeboat. You're going to continue to hear some of them say, 10 feet is fine, 200 feet is fine. You're going to show them these videos, you're going to show them the morning, and they're going to continue to say it. Now, do they think the moon landing was fake? No, they don't. These are smart people. They know what's going on with this stuff. It's incontrovertible. But the reason these folks will keep pushing 10 and 200 is because of their value system. When I was down here in March, one of your speakers said he sold his wake boat because he valued Lake Beulah as a natural resource much more than a recreational resource. And the bottom line is, for the folks who are still wake surfing and after today and this week are going to cling to 200 feet and 10 feet of depth, they know that doesn't work and that's not right. But what it tells you is they value being able to take their families out on that wake boat more than anything else. Just like many of you in this room value the health of the lake more than being able to wake surf. And so it's really just a question of value systems. And part of what value systems, when they get decided, is with your officials. So you've obviously got a lot going on here at Lake Beulah. One thing I will tell you is the lake that TerraVigilance did their study on, Lake Warmut in Connecticut, the town officials of the 3 towns that surround the lake, they didn't know what to do. The study was pretty incontrovertible. A lot of people wanted something done. So the town boards of the 3 entities, what they did is they said, look, we're going to put it to the voters. So 3 weeks ago, they had a formal referendum whether or not to ban wake surfing on Lake Warmut. And this was a formal election. The polling places were open, huge campaign signs. The industry was running in robocalls to people. So the election took place, and the vote was, I think, about 1,452 to ban, and it was like 420 to keep wake surfing on Lake Warmut. The people get this issue, and last piece is the wake surf industry knows they're in trouble with these science that's coming out. They know they're in trouble with what's going on in the state of Wisconsin. They are running the Matson right now for a bailout. We're there. We're working to try to stop them. We're hearing rumors that a select group of people in the legislature may try to drop a bad bill as early as this Tuesday. We're not sure. We're watching it. That would essentially say 200-300 feet from shore, 10 feet of water. We're not sure what will be in it, but we know it's going to be very favorable for the wakeboat industry. That said, just know that Lakes at Stake, we have a number of people on our side in the legislature, both Democrats and Republicans, who get this issue. We're going to be working to defeat anything that comes up bad. And maybe if we get some momentum and wind at our back, maybe we'll be able to get a bill introduced that's very protective of our lakes. So again, want to applaud everything that Protect Lake Beulah has done, applaud the Lake District. As I started out, if just Minnesota dropped, the wakeboat industry would say fake moon landing. If just your studies dropped, they would say fake moon landing. The fact they're both now out here, it's really fantastic. So thank you all.
Where do our local representatives stand on the issue?
Tom, I'm gonna turn this over to you to